Mesa Planning and Zoning public hearing today, February 24th, 2021. We're grateful to all those that could be here in attendance, whether it be virtual or in person. We're thankful to your time. So today, to get started, let's go ahead and do a roll call for our board members, and we'll get started. Chair Astle here, Vice Chair Sarkissian.
Here.
Board Member Boyle.
I'm here.
Board Member Allen.
Here.
Board Member Crockett.
Here.
Board Member Villanueva Saucedo.
Here.
Board Member Ayers.
Here.
Great. We have our full group, and we look forward to today's meeting. Let's go ahead. So today, as part of our planning and zoning public hearing, we have what's called a consent agenda, which are items that we've discussed in our study session and remain on consent. Items that we don't feel need further discussion, we can vote on in one group. We do have a few items today that we have a few additional items to be concerned, one of which was pulled off. So item 3B of our consent agenda, we will remove, which is case ZO20-00538, District 1. We'll be discussing that separately. And then I believe Board Member Boyle, I'll turn the time over to you for a moment. I think there's a few other cases you wanted to reference.
Thank you. Yes. Due to conflict of interest, I will be abstaining from anything having to do with item 3D as in Deanna and its associated case, 4B as in Benjamin, and also item 3B as in Benjamin. Okay.
So you have a conflict of interest on item 3B, and I think the reasoning for those is also requested.
Oh, I'm associated with one of them, with the house on one of them, and with the house across the canal from the other one.
So you're associated with the houses in both cases. Okay. All right. With that said, we'll have a separate consent agenda. You'll notice we'll vote on the first consent agenda that includes Board Member Boyle, and then we'll have a second as he's recusing himself, including item 3D and 4B for the second case. And then for 3B, we'll speak separately. And Board Member Sarkissian, Vice Chair Sarkissian, has agreed to read those today. Let's go ahead and move forward with that.
All right, thank you. So items on the consent agenda are item 2A, minutes from the February 10th, 2021 study session and regular meeting. Item 3A, ZON 20-00210 District 5, within the 6,800 to 7,000 blocks of East University Drive, located east of Power Road on the south side of University Drive, rezoned from LC to LC BIZ overlay and site plan review. This request will allow for the development of a commercial center. Staff recommendation is continued to the March 10th hearing. Item 3C, ZON 20-00628 District 5, within the 3,600 to 3,800 blocks of East McClellan Road, located north of Brown Road and east of Val Vista Drive, rezoning from agricultural to RS 35 PAD. This request will allow for the development of 2 single residence subdivisions. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item 3E, ZON 20-00842 District 6, within the 11,100 to 11,600 blocks of East Pecos Road, and within the 11,100 to 11,600 blocks of East Germain Road, and within the 6,800 to 7,600 blocks of South Meridian Road alignment. Located west of the Meridian Road alignment, south of Pecos Road, and north of Germain Road, modification to the existing bonus intensity zone, BIZ overlay, and site plan review. This request will allow the development of a new industrial buildings within the existing industrial development on the site. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. Item 3F, ZON 20-00877 District 1, within the 2,400 block of North Old Gilbert Road, and within the 22,000 block of East Hermosa Vista Drive, located south of the 202 Red Mountain Freeway and east of Gilbert Road, rezoning from RS 35 to RS 15 BIZ overlay. This request will allow for the development of a single residence subdivision. Staff recommendation is continued to March 10th, 2021. Item 4, preliminary plats, item 4A, Heritage Grove and Mariposa Estates, Unit 2, District 5, within the 3,600 to 3,800 blocks of East McClellan Road, located north of Brown Road and east of Val Vista Drive, preliminary plat. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions. And item 4C, Los Nitos Residential Subdivision, District 1, within the 2400 block of North Old Gilbert Road and within the 2000 block of East Hermosa Vista Drive, located south of the 202 Red Mountain Freeway and east of Gilbert Road, preliminary plat. Staff recommendation is continued to March 10th, 2021.
Thank you very much, Board Member Sarkisian, for hitting those right on the money. We've got one item item 3E, case ZON 20-00842. I believe we do have a comment card. It was not requested that this case be removed from consent, but I wanted to make sure we had the opportunity to allow for the public to be involved in this specific case. I believe staff, can you present that card to us today?
Yes, Chair, thank you. We
Prior to
received
voting, thank you.
a comment card from Kenneth Smith, representative of the property owners east of Meridian Road. He's at 6816 East Brown Road. He did not request this case to be pulled from consent, but he did state, we met with the design board. It agreed that it was time for the city of Mesa to activate the development agreement with CMC Steel, which is adding a $300 million expansion. CMC needs to build a perimeter fence and provide landscaping along Meridian Road in Pecos. Meridian Road is being built this year. The east side of the road is being built by Queen Creek. Mesa needs to build the west half. If Mesa fails to build the west side, it will create an unreasonable condition for the 30,000 vehicles a day that will be bottlenecked by only building half of a road for traffic traveling to and from the SR 24 freeway. And that was the only comment card.
Okay. So before we move forward, board members, do we have any comments or concerns regarding what we've heard or any of the cases today? I believe City of Mesa will have the opportunity to continue to address that as that road will not necessarily address what's going on with the request at hand today. So that's something maybe we can work with that commenter and make sure that that's addressed and continually looked over. I do appreciate comments at any point. Okay, with that said and that comment read, staff, any other items regarding the public that need to be addressed prior to a motion for our consent agenda today?
Oh, no, I did.
No.
If there's no comments, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda, excuse me, as read in for the record on Wednesday, February 24th, 2021.
Second.
Okay, with a motion and a second, let's go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Now it's the nicest city council.
Sorry, I'm hearing somebody's comment. Okay, roll call vote. Chair Astle, yes. Vice Chair Sarkisian.
Yes.
Board Member Boyle.
This is the one that I get to vote on, correct?
Get to vote on this one, yes.
Okay, yes.
Board Member Allen.
Yes.
Board Member Crockett.
I vote aye.
Board Member Villanueva Salcedo.
Yes.
And Board Member Ayers.
Yes.
Great. The motion passes unanimously. And that is accepted. Thank you very much. Vice Chair Sarkisian, let's go ahead and move on to our second consent agenda for the additional item today. 2 items.
The second consent agenda of today is item 3D, ZON 20-00841, District 6, within the 2100 block of East Menlo Circle and with the 2100 block of East Hermosa Vista Drive, located south of the 202 Red Mountain Freeway and east of Gilbert Road. Rezoning from RS 35 to RS 15, this request will allow for the development of a single residence subdivision. Staff recommendation is approval with conditions, and its associated preliminary plat case 4B, Menlo Circle, District 1, preliminary plat. Staff recommendation is also approval with conditions.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the second consent agenda as read today.
Thank you.
Second.
All right, Board Member Crockett, thank you for a second. All right, let's go ahead and do a roll call vote, and I appreciate Board Member Boyle for recusing himself on this one with a conflict. Chair Astle, yes. Vice Chair Sarkisian.
Yes.
Board Member Allen.
Yes.
Board Member Crockett.
I vote aye.
Board Member Villanueva Salcedo,
Yes.
and Board Member Ayers.
Yes.
Okay, that case also passes with Board Member Boyle recusing himself. Okay, thank you very much. That covers the items today that we have on our consent agenda. And for the remainder of discussion today, we have one case, case 3B, that I'll read into record for discussion. Case ZON 20-00538 in District 1 within the 1200 to 1400 blocks of West Bass Pro Shop Drive, South Side, and the 1100 block of North Alma School Road, West Side, located south of the 202 Red Mountain Freeway and west side of Alma School, approximately 30.9 acres. Modification to the planned area development, the PAD overlay on the property and the site plan review. This request will allow for a new office building and parking garage within an existing office development. And at the moment, we have staff's recommendation, which is approval with conditions. If possible, we ask that Mr. McCann give us a presentation for this case, and then we will spend time addressing the public. I believe we have numerous that have requested time to speak. We'd love to hear from them and as well the applicant. So thank you, Mr. McCann.
Buckets, Pillsbury, and Villanueva.
Just when you send it.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the board. Case before you, ZON 20-00538. The request before you is a modification to the existing PAD overlay and site plan review. This request will allow for a new office building and parking garage within an existing office development. This subject site is located west of Alma School Road on the south side of Bass Pro Drive. So we take a look at the general plan in the area. It is designated as a mixed-use activity district. In this area, we are looking for significant retail and commercial components, areas that can attract people from a large radius to the site. It's also located within the regional scale subtype, which is intended to for businesses to attract people to Mesa from the larger region. As we take a look at the existing zoning, it is planned employment park with a planned area development overlay, PEP with a PAD. As part of the request for a PAD and site plan, we look at the criteria. We look to make sure the project creates an innovative and high quality design, developed as a cohesive unit, is consistent with the general plan and the zoning. The design, scale, and massing will enhance the appearance of the site and is consistent with our development standards, and it is appropriate to the function of the project. This is a street view looking southwest from the intersection of Alma School Road and Bass Pro Drive. There you can see one of the existing two-story office building as part of the existing development. The next site photos are just some site photos from the exterior of the property, just to kind of give you an idea of the subject property. This view is looking south from the roundabout along Bass Pro Drive into the site. As you look into this picture, obviously the landscaping will stay, but then you will see in the future the proposed building, and behind that will be the parking garage. This is a view from the southwest corner of the site. This is on the south side of the existing canal, just to give you an idea of the distance between uses, as well as just a scale of the canal. This is the same image looking east along the canal. This is just along the north side of the canal. This next image is a view looking west. This is going to be around, if you were looking from Alma School Road looking west. This shows you the grade change as you progress down the canal, as well as how it relates to the existing site. This is further down the canal a little bit, basically to the middle of the site. This is where the proposed parking garage and building would be, just to give you an idea of the buffer as well. As mentioned, this is a proposed site plan including with a 3-story office building as well as a 4-level parking garage. There are 4 existing office buildings on the site. The buildings, building along Alma School Road and then along Bass Pro Drive are 2 stories in height. The building along the canal in the southwest corner of the site is an existing 3-story building. The area in blue is the subject area that they'll be looking to modify the existing site plan to be able to put the 3-story building and the 4-level parking garage. As we take a look at kind of how we have gotten to this point today, the image on the far left is a 2008 council-approved site plan. Back in 2008, the council-approved site plan included 6 2-story buildings. In 2014, this was the most recent administrative review done on this site plan, allowed for 4 buildings, 3 of them being 2-story, the fourth one being 3-story. Something to note, the overall project was about 11,000 square feet less than what was approved in 2008. It was approved with 2 options for at-grade parking as well as at-grade parking with a parking deck above. So those would be the 2 options approved in 2014. The project did go before the design review back in October and back in February. The board had no major concerns with the building design. The board did recommend specific recommendations in regards to the parking structure. Some of the recommendations included the garage screening, increased landscaping along the canal, as well as the articulation of the garage. As we look at the current elevations, you can see from the west and east elevation, they kind of stepped the height as you get to that southern part of the parking garage. Not shown on this page, but the landscaping, they did provide, or exceeding the minimum required landscaping along that southern property line adjacent to the canal, as well as planting 48-inch box trees when the code would just require mostly 24-inch with 25% being 36-inch box. The applicant is still working on revisions based on additional comments from the design review board and will continue to work with staff to address those. Here's just a couple renderings just to show you the proposed kind of landscape buffer and additional plantings. From these renderings, you're able to also see kind of how that garage steps up as you step up in elevation from the canal and the adjacent residence more into the site. We had the applicant provide a sightline exhibit. This is just to show you, as I discussed previously, the kind of transition in height. This kind of shows you a little bit better how they have stepped down the southern section of the garage and increase in height as you get towards that main building. There are 3 kind of sight lines as the grade along Mountain View does change as you go east to west. The applicant did complete a citizen participation process. They did notify property owners within 1,000 feet, HOAs, and registered neighborhoods. The applicant did hold 2 neighborhood meetings virtually. The first one was back in October, and the second one was in November, both of 2020. Some of the neighborhood concerns included the proposed landscaping, the lighting, the height of the parking garage, the glare from rooftop solar panels, as well as the location of the refuse enclosures. The applicant has worked and made modifications to the site plan, and the elevations, as you can tell, no longer have the rooftop solar. The solid waste enclosures have moved from the south side of the parking garage to more the east and west sides, and they have kind of stepped down that parking garage to help with that transition in height, and as I mentioned previously, have increased the landscaping. In summary, it complies with the 2040 Mesa General Plan, meets the review criteria for site plan review. With that, staff is recommending approval with conditions. I'd be happy to answer any question. And as well, board, I do have the Economic Development Director who would like to make a brief presentation as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe prior to, we could probably do that now if that would be helpful. Is he available?
That's correct. Bill is here.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Planning Board. It's good to be back here. It's been a few years since I've been in front of the group. But Bill Jubjaniak, Economic Development Director for the city, for the record, and I'm here to just simply represent economic development is very supportive and strongly supports this project. And there's 3 basic things that I want to really talk about. One, success breeds success. And you stop and think about, this is a site that allows for Class A office development, and it's over 90% full. So this is our opportunity to add to that. This is where we add high value, high wage jobs and continue to help the city grow. Secondly, part of that success is its location. But also, I think additionally, what's important is the amenities that a facility like this has, and part of those amenities is parking. I can remember being around that site. Vero Mobility was in there. There wasn't a whole lot of parking to be found. That was pre-pandemic. I think that it's been important to, having worked with this property owner, having worked with this property manager, that they've done a great job of adding additional quality features to the south side of the garage, stepping it back, adding landscaping. Those are not inexpensive things, but it helps me because adding those features allows us to attract higher quality tenants as well. And this is, I think, a great opportunity and a great part of the city to keep ourselves growing in a proper way. That's all I have for now.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jabjeniak. Do we have any, before we have Bill step down, do we have any comments or questions for him by our board at this time? Board Member Crockett?
Not a comment or question, but just a statement. I just wanted to tell Bill that we appreciate his input. I always appreciate the input of economic development as we consider these projects that come before us. So, Bill, thanks for taking the time out of your schedule to come and do this, and I encourage you to come back and see us as often as you're able.
Board Member Crockett, thank you for that. With some advance warning, next time I think I will actually put a tie on or a sport coat just for you. You look dapper. Thank you.
And I would like to second those comments too that Board Member Crockett made. That's always my question is, what's economic development's position on this on different projects? And I know that sometimes it's kind of tough to be able to stand up and really give a definitive position. But I so appreciate that, Bill. Thank you for coming and thank you for sharing that with us. And I wish that we had that same type of input on every project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Chair, I just wanted to clarify and make sure. So if I heard correctly from our Economic Development Director, that it's currently 90% full capacity, what's existing out there?
But I heard also, would you like to confirm that?
Yes.
Yeah, and then just go into a little more detail, if you could, the parking value.
Sure.
Of
Okay.
what that brings to the site.
I'd be glad to. The 4 existing buildings have seen a lot of success. The last one drew some high-profile names as well. The last 2 buildings have drawn really some high-profile names. The last time we did a little CoStar search for available property, all the square footage in that entire Waypoint development is over 90% occupied. That gives you an idea of demand. We're a great alternative to some of the markets in our neighboring communities of Tempe and Scottsdale. So it remains very full. There's small turnover when it does happen. So I think that's important. Parking ratios are important. Pre-pandemic, we were starting to see parking ratios creep higher than 5 per 1,000 square feet, higher than 5 per 1,000. Which is a lot of parking, and I think a lot more than what's overall planned here. So we get turned away very quickly if you don't have an appropriate number of parking. I do expect the office market to come back. There is office leads, despite the pandemic. They are in the market. They're not as plentiful as a year ago. I will certainly attest to that. But parking and parking ratios are an important component to even getting your foot in the door. If you don't have them, you're eliminated very quickly.
Okay, thank you. Board Member Sarkisian, does that satisfy your question?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay, any others? All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Jabjeniak, appreciate your time. Thank you for being here as always. Okay, with that said, I think at this point, maybe we could have a quick introduction from the applicant and any other items that the applicant would like to bring to the table for this case. And then I'd really like to spend a little time with our neighborhood and with the public, just making sure that we get those comments addressed and discussed and on the table for all of us to be thinking about. So whoever we have here representing the applicant, I'd love to hear from them. And if they're here and they're speaking, they're on mute.
Yes, hello. This is Michael Monroe. I am working with Michael Edwards with Davis and also Adam, who I think is going to be joining the call here shortly, or he is on it. Adam, are you?
Adam is on, yeah.
I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead, Adam.
Okay, fabulous. Thanks, guys. I'll continue with my presentation. Thank you for your time. There's a brief PowerPoint here that we have available for you that'll walk you through a little bit about what we're proposing to do. What you'll see here, if we'll go to the next slide, Ryan, the PEP is an important zoning district. It's really the key to creating a planned employment park. And to Bill's point, I think Mesa always finds itself competing with the high-end Class A office along the 101 in Scottsdale and Tempe Town Marketplace. And if we want to be serious about attracting those highways jobs, we got to have buildings that can support that. I want to recognize the opposition to this case. I certainly appreciate their involvement. And because of their involvement, this plan has changed and been improved because of their participation. And their feelings and sentiments and opinions on this hasn't been without any consideration on our part. I think the balance and the challenge that we're working with is how do we create office development and bring in the uses that we need while also being sensitive to the residents behind. And I've got to be honest, it's a bit of walking a tightrope. But I want to show the next slide. Ryan, you go to the next one. A lot of the sentiment that I've heard is that they haven't been able to participate in the engagement process since this was zoned. When this was zoned back in 2007, it was always planned to have buildings along the canal. In fact, the two arrows point to those two buildings. Each building was 38 feet tall and 83,000 square feet apiece. And those are right along the canal, even back then when this was first zoned and site planned in 07. And over the years, Ryan, we go to the next slide, there's been a few different modifications. And I think respectfully, the neighbors do have a question that deserves an answer. And that's why weren't they aware of the changes that have been administratively approved over the years? You know, I didn't write the city code, but the city code does allow major amendments that require a public hearing process and minor amendments that can be administratively approved by staff. And I wasn't at the table and neither was my client, but at different points, the planning director then made certain determinations within his authority and power that certain amendments didn't need to, could be done administratively. And that's why you see like this one here in 2013, where they consolidated those two buildings into one building along the canal. And that building became 50 feet tall and 159,000 square feet. And so I bring you all that information. I think it's important to know the background so you know how we got to where we are today. Ryan, next slide. As you look at this slide and this image, you'll see that our garage building is in precisely the same location as originally shown in 07, where two prior buildings were approved. The difference is our garage building today is only 26 feet tall on the side closest to the neighbors. And then it steps back to about 37 feet tall on the north side, further away from neighbors. That's clearly less than the height when this plan was originally approved in 07 for 38-foot tall two buildings. The reason why I just share that is because I want you to know that even though this plan has changed over time, the original 07 plan to the 2021 plan still has buildings along the canal, and arguably our buildings are a little bit lower in height than what was originally contemplated. Ryan, we'll go to the next slide. I think this image just kind of helps highlight and shows you what we're proposing to do. A Class A office building with a detached accessory garage structure. You'll notice that our design of the office building is complementary to the rest of the park, and our heights are complementary to the rest of the park. Next slide. This exhibit helps you show what our heights are. Our building's proposed at 50 feet. Our garage is a blend of 26 and 37. But when you look at the heights of the buildings on the existing park today, the building west of us is 50 feet, and the building east of us is about 35, 36. So as you can see, what we're proposing today with this proposal is not a departure from what's already present on the property today. Next slide. I certainly am aware of the community feedback, and I think because of their feedback, we've been able to make some strong changes. The one thing that we simply couldn't do was eliminate a parking garage. But what we did do is we addressed things like height, lighting, parking ratios, canopies, etc. Removing trash locations, adding more landscaping. Ryan, let's go to the next slide. And part of that way we got that feedback was from doing two virtual meetings, one in October, one in November, a site visit with the neighbors in December, and a meeting that they coordinated in January. That also gave us a chance to take photos and take a drone that could be flown at the height of the residences behind us so we could make some better simulations in images. Ryan, next slide. And so what you see here is we lowered half of our garage on the side closest to the neighbors to 26 feet. That's the height of a two-story home today.
And recognizing that the neighbors' homes are on a raised, elevated bench, and we are lower than them, a two-story home significantly away from them is, a two-story height of 26 feet is, I think, hopefully reasonable. We did remove the solar panels from the top of the garage because understandably that created greater height. And we started to add perforated metal paneling in between each floor of the garage. And the purpose of that was to screen out lights that they were concerned would reflect into their backyards. We addressed some of the colors in the garage. We removed our refuse enclosures that were previously behind the garage to different spots. We started adding in more landscaping islands, more landscaping along the canal. We eliminated about 100 spaces on top of the garage, plus additional spaces at surface level. And we started adding pedestrian paths along the canal. If you go to the next slide, Ryan, you can see the before, and I think this shows the size of what we were dealing with previously with the trash bins behind and the solar canopies above and the lack of screening. To our next slide, Ryan. And here you can see how we've lowered the height, removed the canopies, and even started to create a new screen element. And this might be the first time anybody in the public has seen this. You see at the DRB last week, they felt like our screening was too flat. And so we took out the mesh screening between the floors and started to add something a little bit more architecturally interesting with reliefs and heights and variations, but still having the same effect of screening out potential cars parking there. And this type of screening element was something borrowed from the AT Still parking garage off of Wrecker and Baseline. Now, we haven't run this back through staff entirely, but we're just trying to show that we're constantly evolving this plan to be responsive to those concerns. Ryan, we'll just skip real quick. These are some of the before and afters. I know your time's short, so I'll skip again one more, Ryan. This was our garage that we were planning with the metal screen in between the levels. And now we scrapped this to come with the next slide, Ryan. Something a little bit more architecturally interesting that still has the same purpose of screening it out. So at the end of the day, go to the next slide. You can see, as we highlighted in here, the side components that we've removed from the canopies to the half levels. Ryan, to the next slide. You can kind of see how it looks after, once we take off those panels and remove half of those top floor. It's been key. Ryan, go to 2 more slides over. Thank you. I think it's important to kind of put into perspective the view. And this is a view taken with a drone at the level of the residents behind us. This is in the very center of the project. If you were to look straight forward, you would see the entryway coming into this park from Bass Pro Drive. Let's go to the next slide. This is an image of how it looked with the building inset into it. I recognize that we do have a building that will be visible with trees, but if you go back to the prior slide, Ryan, and then toggle back and forth, what you'll see is the view really isn't obscuring much at the center point. Go down to the next slide. We took another angle from our eastern point of view, looking more to the northwesterly direction, sort of towards Camelback Mountain. And in fact, you might be able to see barely Camelback Mountain between the 2 buildings off more to the left side, but it's barely visible at this point from over here. So Ryan, you go to the next slide. You can kind of see how this will inset into that. So Ryan, if you might toggle back and forth. There you go. You might kind of get a better idea on how these two will relate. Next slide. I think I'll be wrapping up in the next 30 seconds with this. I appreciate that this is consistent with the general plan. More importantly, the mixed-use activity character area. And this is precisely the type of thing that the city general plan has been encouraging and that development pattern has been affecting, and we hope we can continue to be as effective in attracting those developments. Go to the next slide. And at the end of the day, we are consistent with the general plan. We're consistent with the underlying PEP zoning. We're consistent with the overlaying PAD. Our heights that we are proposing are consistent with the heights that are already on the project today. And it does meet all the criteria for site plan review as evidenced by staff's report. But I think more importantly, it hits some of the key city initiatives of trying to attract the type of employment and high-wage jobs. And I think one of the reasons why staff is able to recommend approval of this is because when this was originally zoned in 07, buildings were planned right here along the canal at about 166,000 combined square feet at about 38 feet tall. And where our parking garage is today actually might even be a little bit further away from where those buildings were planned in 07 at a height of 26 and 37 feet, very consistent with what was originally considered back then. I want to make sure I'm clear on this. I very much appreciate the neighbors' participation in this case. It has affected positive changes that's made this garage in the back and the landscaping, the trash enclosures more acceptable, even if it frankly isn't enough to resolve their concerns. I do appreciate that feedback because it's created a better project. And for that reason, I hope you recommend approval and based on the reasons I've presented. Thank you for giving me the time to make this quick presentation.
Thank you very much, Adam, for your time, and thanks for keeping it right around 10 minutes there. I appreciate that. We've got a lot to cover today. Any questions, board members, for Mr. Baugh prior to moving forward from the applicant? Okay. All right, at this point, we'd like to, we have a number of comment cards that have been filled out in advance of this meeting that wish to speak, and some of which we're not sure if they wish to speak. So we're going to turn the time over to staff for a minute, specifically Rebecca. Thank you for helping us with this, to present those cards, make sure we know who's on and who wants to do which, and we'll regulate time. I do want everyone to know that's participating today that we want to hear what you have to say. We wouldn't be here if we didn't. The 3-minute time constraint, I know sometimes it's hard to address that. I wish I could, maybe in a setting where it was easier to gather everybody together in one and speak as one, we could give more time, but it's so hard to hear from everybody that wishes to speak and do it for much more than 3 minutes each. So I appreciate your willingness to fit all that in, and if there's something specific, please let me know. We'll work with you. Let's go ahead and move forward with that. Becky.
Chair, thank you so much. The first comment card we received was from Philip Bramson. He did wish to speak. He is opposed to the project, and we can hear from Mr. Bramson if he's on the line.
I am on the line. Is it possible to speak a little later in the sequence of neighbors?
Sure. We'll go on to
no
the
problem.
next one, certainly. Joshua Boyle. Joshua Boyle did not indicate whether he wanted to speak or not. So if he's on the line and would like to speak, he's welcome to do that right now.
Yes, thank you. Can you see me and hear me okay?
We can hear you.
I can definitely hear you. I don't necessarily have your face in front of me because there's a number of people on here, but I will be listening, and I believe the other board members as well, very clear.
Thank you. And I have 3 minutes, is that correct?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. So thank you all very much for your time today. My name is Joshua Boyle. I reside at 1328 West Mountain View Drive. And I am in unison with the rest of the residents. I'd like to request that the proposed parking garage be built underground so that no more than 1 story of the structure will be above ground. I would also like to request that the proposed commercial building be restricted to 2 stories tall, the equivalent height of the current Waypoint 1, 2, and 3 buildings, which is the height that was originally anticipated in the 2007 site plan. So there seems to have been some discrepancy about how high those buildings would have been, but it's my understanding it was approximately 26 feet tall, the same height as the original buildings there. The 3-story building came about because of the 2013 change, which my understanding as well is that, at least from some high up people, I believe maybe the city manager said that shouldn't have happened that way. And so because something was done wrong before, we, the residents, are asking that you not allow something to be done wrong again. I'd like to give a little analogy, if I may. I'm a Civil War fan. And General McClellan, during the Civil War, who preceded General Grant in command of the Army, gave Lincoln great anxiety because he would not go to war. He would not move his forces forward. And so if you were to ask General McClellan, he would say his goal was to defeat the South. His goal was to defeat Lee and the Army of Northern Virginia. And yet he wasn't willing, he wanted to win, but he didn't want to win by committing the Army of the Potomac or by actually sacrificing anything. And we as the residents feel that that's what's happening here with the developers. They'll tell you they want to cooperate with us, they want to work with us, but really they don't want to sacrifice much of anything. By removing the solar panels and reducing half of the parking garage, they actually are probably saving some money in that regard, although there may be a little bit of extra cost for some of the screening. And so In addition, another story regarding General McClellan. At one point, he came to a river. He said, this is, I think we're going to have a problem crossing the Chickahominy River. We're going to need to sound the river. We're going to have to delay. Then Lieutenant Custer rode into the middle of the river on his horse. He said, General, this is how deep it is. So our request is for an underground parking garage. The developer has said, well, we're concerned about the water table. We don't know if that can work. To the north of this lot, there is a quarry. And you can see that the water table is in fact very, very low, and there would certainly be room for a parking garage here. So we're asking that the developers be good neighbors, that there be a 2-story building that still allows for the development, and that there be an underground parking garage. It's more expensive for them, but being a good neighbor, sometimes we have to spend more money to keep our property nice and to be good neighbors. So thank you very much for your time.
I appreciate your time, Joshua. Thank you.
The next comment card we have is from Shauna Boyle. I'm not sure if she wanted to speak as well.
Yes, I would like to speak as well. Thank you for your time. Yes, my name is Shauna Boyle. That was my husband that just spoke. We own the last vacant lot in the neighborhood, 1328 West Mountain View Drive, and we're preparing to build a home there for our family. In unison with the rest of the residents, I too would like to request that the proposed parking garage be built underground so that no more than 1 story of the structure will be above ground. I would also like to request that the proposed commercial building be restricted to 2 stories tall, the equivalent height to the current Waypoint 1, 2, and 3 buildings. We have heard the city of Mesa has a current goal of no longer being a bedroom community, to bring more business to Mesa and allow it to be a city where people can not only live, but also work. If the goal is to have a balance in Mesa of both residential and commercial, it seems that city planning decisions should reflect that goal, not to favor one over the other, but to compromise. Our Country Club Heights neighborhood should be rewarded by the city for its beauty. It is a gem of a neighborhood, an outlier in contrast to many West Mesa neighborhoods. The large custom homes along Mountain View Drive are $500,000 homes. If you don't make compromises to protect nice neighborhoods while attracting commercial development to Mesa, where do you expect the executives from these businesses to live? Maybe they'll opt for a low-income apartment building instead. If there are no affluent neighborhoods for these business executives to live in, they will move to Gilbert or Scottsdale. You will shift the city to a 9-to-5 community, and the bedrooms and nightlife will stay in Gilbert and Scottsdale. Our suggestion to build the parking garage underground and adjust the commercial building to 2 stories is a compromise. They still get their development, but our neighborhood keeps its dignity and most of its appeal. The developers will argue that bad time for a phone call, huh? The developers will argue that putting the parking garage underground will be an increased cost to them. Well, that argument can be made for both sides. The engineers were in the process of finalizing their plans for our home when we learned of this proposed development. We had to stop and redesign our house to account for the fact that there may be a large concrete box of a parking garage directly to the northeast of our new home. The redesign has cost us in added architectural fees and engineering fees. Additionally, if this development is allowed to be built as planned, the property value of all these nice custom homes is going to drop. Not to mention, many of the neighbors would be pouring money into large trees and barrier screens to block the unsightly building that will surely cause a pancake effect on our properties. Collectively, the cost to all of us as residents by allowing the structure to go up as currently planned would cost us just as much as it would the developers to just dig it in the ground. And I'd just like to say the pictures that you saw weren't really a fair shake. A lot of the pictures they showed were if you were swimming in the canal, not if you were standing on the balconies of our nice homes. It's much different when you see it in person. I encourage you all to come look in person. Totally different perspective. The developers also argue that they can't dig it in the ground because of the water table. And as my husband mentioned, we know that's not true because the quarry tells us the water table is much lower. 10 more seconds. Please approve our proposed compromise. Take a stand for the long-term future of Mesa to not be taken over by a sea of commercial buildings and low-income housing, but allow beautiful neighborhoods to flourish amongst a thriving economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Shauna, for your time. Appreciate your comments. Those are great comments. Okay.
Chair, board members, the next comment is from Janice Jakes, and she does want to speak and has a photo that she wants to share.
Thank you very much. My name is Janice Jakes, 1318 West Mountain View Drive. This would be the view that we would look at, not the views that you saw that Adam showed, just like Shauna said. This is a scanned view from a designer friend that we had. So that would be what the 4-story building would look like, not what those other pictures would look like. So I would appreciate you putting that up. So I have a whole document about criteria to read, and it's going to take me over 3 minutes, so I'll do the best that I can. Thank you. As will state, the city-approved master plan has been built out. The last 2 buildings along the south side with surface parking in between exist today. We want no more. This area cannot tolerate over 500,000 square feet of additional buildings. 150,000 square feet office building and 365,000 square foot parking garage. The entire master plan had previously been only 434,000 square feet, and now this enormous parking garage is 365,000 square feet, almost the size of the entire master plan. This proposal doubles the size of the center at the expense of our quality of life. And I know the economic developer came on, and the things he said about 90% of the parking, I was listening on the study session. I think a lot of the board agreed, you know, when they asked about parking being too much, and I think you'll find out in some other statements that my husband is going to make that the parking is not certainly the parking is way too much parking. I am not against business. I'm a business owner in Mesa for over 30 years, and I've lived in Mesa over 4 years. But this is inappropriate. What they're planning, inappropriate. This site plan modification request does not meet many of the criteria found in your own zoning ordinance. These criteria apply since the application was submitted before the new criteria were adopted. So I'll try to start getting this all in. Section 1169-5 review criteria. A2/695C. Does the overall design of the project include its scale, massing, site plan, exterior design, and landscaping enhance the appearance and feature of the project site and surrounding natural and built environment? No, it doesn't. The scale is a massive 4-story parking garage and 3-story office building adjacent to a single-family residential custom home neighborhood. The massing is a giant flat box with no architectural design or articulation to break up the large massing. A5-69-5F. Is the project compatible with neighboring development by avoiding big differences in building scale and character between developments on adjoining lots in the same zoning district and providing a harmonious transition in scale and character between different districts?
3 minutes,
No.
Chair.
3 minutes already? Okay, well, I sent this to Rebecca, Ryan, and Leslie. I don't know, I sent it today, so I don't know if anybody got to take a look at it. But this comes from your criteria. So I do argue what Adam said about meeting the criteria, and there's 3 more items here. Can I finish that up?
You go ahead, Janice, and finish those up just for another 10 or 15 seconds. But yeah, we have received and been corresponding back and forth with staff. So I appreciate, we want to make sure and hear what your concerns are, and we do agree. We can reference those other items as we already may have with what we've received from staff. So.
Okay, appreciate it. The next item was, does the project contribute to the creation of a visually interesting built environment? Does it include a variety of well-designed building facades, roof lines, and building heights with a unifying context? And we do not believe that it does. It's large, boxy buildings. Does this PEP site provide a higher degree of design interest, building articulation, and additional attention to building scale and context-sensitive building massing on all sides of the building? We do not believe it does. And then lastly, does the project reduce the impact of employment uses on adjacent residential development by providing appropriately scaled transitions and buffers to abutting land uses and provide a higher degree of architectural interest on walls visible from residential development. We do not believe that it does. So I appreciate you letting me go a little longer and then making sure that you review this. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Janice, for your time. I appreciate you making comments. It's very helpful.
Chair, the next speaker is Perry Jakes. He also has a photo that Brian has put up.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Perry Jakes. I live at 1318 West Mountain View Drive with my wife. If Ryan, you could just leave this snapshot up. So what I went at it is a sort of math. And what I'd like to say, and I'll read it well, I think I can get as well as I'll get through the 3 minutes, but please take a look at this aerial shot from Google Earth. This picture was taken about 4 to 5 months pre-COVID, around 8/12/19. And at around about 10 or 11 o'clock during a workday period. So this snapshot represents how Waypoint development is built now. Those are all the buildings that are existing at this point before the new 5th building's coming in. So to help understand why Waypoint wants such a large parking garage, I wanted to see how many parking spots are already installed or made. I spent the time, believe it or not, zooming in on this. You can get really close with the Google Earth Pro. I counted all the parking spots. There's 2,203 parking spots now already on site. They all counted, and then, then I counted the cars that were being used during the middle of a workday, and I came up with 741 cars. That means that only 30% of the parking spots that are being used and 1,462 parking spots are not being used. And this is with 90% occupancy, just like they were talking about earlier. The developer wants the total of 2,757 parking spots after they build a new building. This is 1,190 parking spots above what the city has recommended for this property. This also requires them to put up about 550 more spots above what the requirement is. So hear me out here a little bit. If you are working with the percentages that we've been looking at for the last 14 years about how many people are parking out there, here's how it goes. 4% of the 257 parking spots is not only 937 that would be used if they built the 2,757 spots. If you went to 67% of occupancy in the parking spots, that's only 1,847 spaces. If you went to 80%, that actually equals basically what's actually built out there right now. We have never seen 80% occupancy on those parking spots for 14 years. Even as the development got bigger and bigger, that's what we're watching. We're never watching 80% of them being used. We have never, ever seen that, and we don't expect to see it in the 14 years. In our opinion, the parking garage doesn't need to be built. If the developer wants to create covered parking for its Class A clientele, then why not put up lowered shade structures that would give the clients and Class A neighborhood some breathing room, so we're not looking at this box that's going to be almost 600 feet long, 4 stories high, lit up every night, with poles on top of what we're looking up at. They don't talk about that on the top row of the parking, or the top floor of the parking garage, all night long, 24/7 with the noise. So they could also put solar panels on all this. So they can see in the picture, those parking structures that are shaded parking structures, they could put a lot more of those out there, would be a lot more feasible and a lot more breathing room for us as we look at this thing. Why would a Class A clientele?
We've gone over a little bit. I'm going to let you finish up, though, I don't want to cut you off all the way.
I just got one or two more paragraphs. Thank you very much. Why would a Class A clientele want to look at a 4-story concrete, ugly parking garage on the south side of that beautiful building? And not only is that, what is it? Why do they want to have a heat? How close it is to the other buildings and this walkway between the parking garage and the new building, it would just be a heat zone. It's a heat zone for us if they build that parking garage out there as well. If you follow the math and the actual usage of the spaces, you will see that the parking garage really is not needed. Thanks a lot for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Perry. Appreciate your time.
Next comment card is from Kathy Jones.
Do we know if Kathy wishes to speak?
She did not indicate on her comment card.
Kathy, are you here and do you wish to speak, or do you have a comment that needs to be read? Does she have a comment listed there, Becky?
She does.
Why don't you go ahead and read it, since it sounds like we won't be hearing from her today, and we'll at least get to hear what she referenced in her card.
Certainly. This is Kathy Jones. She resides at 1248 West Ellis Street. She states, I live on Ellis Street in the neighborhood adjacent to the proposed project in Mesa Riverview. Although it does not directly impact my property, the proposed garage and three-story building will impact my neighbors and the quiet enjoyment of their property. So because I want to be a good neighbor, this project concerns me too. I would hope that the developer also wants to be a good neighbor too, and that the city would facilitate this. As such, I stand in solidarity with the request of contractually limit the garage to 1 story and the new building to 2 stories.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Kathy, for your comment card. Let's go ahead and move on to the next name. Rebecca, if you could. Thank you.
The next comment card comes from Diana Devine. She did not indicate if she was going to speak or not.
Diana, are you available to speak on this in this meeting? Same thing, Becky. Let's go ahead and read if she has a comment.
I'd be happy to. She resides at 1263 West Mountain View. She states, I live at 1263 West Mountain View Drive within the neighborhood of this project. The height of the parking garage and the lighting and aesthetics remain the major concern. With green strategies as part of our future, I don't understand why the project proposes to be overparked. That concludes her comment.
Okay. No, thank you very much.
All right. The next card is from Douglas Allsworth, and he did not indicate whether he would be on the phone or not.
Yeah, I'm here, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Douglas, you've got 3 minutes. If you could keep it as close to that as possible, it'd be helpful.
I will try. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I represent some of the neighboring property owners in the Country Club Heights neighborhood just across the canal. My clients include Perry and Janice Jakes, who reside at 1318 West Mountain View Drive. Their house is to the immediate south of the proposed new buildings, directly across the canal. I want to first address some of the comments of Mr. Baugh. I appreciate what he's doing here, but I think he's somewhat misrepresented what happened in 2007 with the site plan. The original site plan that was approved was 443,000 square feet. That's been built out. There are 434,000 square feet now. They traded for larger buildings. So there are fewer buildings, but it's the same amount of square feet. What they're trying to do now is add another 152,000 square feet of building area, plus the garage, which is something on the order of 365,000 square feet. So I think it is misleading to suggest that what was originally planned is very consistent with what's going on here. That's just not true. The commercial plan was proposed back in 2007. The neighbors objected because of the proximity to their residential neighborhood. A compromise was reached. The neighbors were assured that none of the buildings would be taller than 2 stories. None of them. They were told that the full build out would be something on the order of 443,000 square feet. That is what is there now. The first 2 buildings that were built in phase 1 were both 2 stories. There have been, I believe, 6 administrative site plan amendments after phase 1. Unfortunately, no notice to the neighbors was provided. This should have been considered a major site plan amendment. It was not. The neighbors weren't informed. Now, that is part of the history here, letting down the neighbors. We can't change that now, I understand. But what the board should recognize is that phase 2 is completed. They have the 434,000 square feet in office space in building area that they asked for. So the owners have what they asked for, and the neighbors have something close to what they expected. But now the developer or the applicant wants to go far beyond what the original site plan contemplated. 152,000 square feet additional office building, a 4-story parking garage, right on the south end of the property. This is exactly what the neighbors were concerned about in 2007. It is not right. This proposed amendment more than doubles the total building area of the property. It calls for taller structures than what was contemplated before and sold to the neighbors. It contemplates taller structures for the most part than what is there now. So the requested office building and garage should be denied as inconsistent with the city's site plan criteria and design guidelines. This is too much intensity to add to the site. It is better to leave the 2007 master plan in place. But if the board is interested in compromise, numerous neighbors have expressed a willingness to compromise here. Keep the office building at 2 stories. Put in a smaller parking garage. These are reasonable requests. With all due respect to Mr. Baugh, the applicant has not been very receptive to compromise and to talk to the neighbors about compromise. My phone calls to Mr. Baugh have not even been returned. I hope that changes after today, but I hope the Planning and Zoning Board will recognize that the neighbors have a serious interest here, and the scale of this project is too large. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug, for your time. I appreciate your comments, very helpful, and we've taken note. And I do, one immediate comment is we are so clear and excited that the neighbors are this involved. It's so helpful in us making decisions, and it's what we actually hope for in every case. So I appreciate your time and your efforts in representing those who live there. Let's go ahead with further comment cards. Okay. Becky, do we have others?
The next card came from Erin LaGrassa, and she stated that she would like to have the attorney Douglas Allsworth, who just spoke, speak for her. She does not have concerns or comments, and she wanted Mr. Allsworth to speak for her.
Doug, I presume that's what we've just heard from you, representing numerous of that community you were saying?
I think we were concerned about the 3-minute live-in. I know I went about a minute over. Yeah, I could add a bit, which is just that transition, we've got an office park right next to a residential neighborhood. This is the transition, the scale is important here. And that's what the neighbors are concerned about. That's what they're addressing. I think the changes that the applicant has made to their plan under the guise of citizen participation, this is window dressing. It is not addressing the substantive fundamental concerns. So I think that the neighborhood offer of compromise is very reasonable. I think that what the neighbors would really like is to not have the site plan amended, not have the pad amended. But the master plan, it has been implemented. The developer has what they originally asked for. But if in the interest of economic development, further development of this office park is deemed in the best interest of the city, at least consider the past promises to these neighbors about 2-story buildings and about the size of the development, and scale this application back.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate that. Do we have others? Becky, I guess while Doug's close by, were there others referencing a similar request?
No, Chair, but I have received 4 more comment cards since the beginning of the study session.
Thank you. Yeah.
So the next one is Lisa Mills. She did not indicate if she wanted to speak or not, but if she's on the phone.
Lisa, are you on the phone and wanting to speak? Let's go ahead and hear what the comment card has to say. Becky, please. Thank you.
She actually didn't make any statements, just that she would be on the phone to comment or answer questions if needed.
And no reference if she's opposed or for the project?
That's correct.
Okay. If she does happen to go on and we can see that, please let me know. Otherwise, let's go ahead and move on to the next card.
Okay, the next card is from Ruth Showalter, and she did indicate she wanted to speak, I believe.
Thank you. Ruth, are you available to speak today? There isn't a chance that we have cut anybody off, is there? Just making sure.
No, sorry, my
There-
big fat finger didn't work on the unmute.
Well, it's probably not as
I had
big
to
as
use
my
my mouth.
fingers, so you're doing just fine.
Thanks.
All right, we'd
My
love to
name's
hear
Ann
from you.
Schultz.
Thanks for being here.
May I begin?
Please, yes, 3 minutes.
I am at 1262 West Mountain View Drive. I think I speak for everyone that we certainly appreciate each board member's attention and the very thoughtful comments that we've heard both in your study session and that we've actually gotten from one of the board members who accepted our invitation for a site visit, where we really had a great chance to back and forth have a discussion, and that person was able to ask questions to get better informed about this. I think you can see that this is more than just a case of, well, Mesa's zoning and building permits are site specific and you just have a right to build. Because this site, our neighborhood, has a very unique and intimate connection to this adjoining property and what would be built here. In fact, this rendering behind me, I apologize to the architects who may be rolling their eyes and thinking that this is a misrepresentation of things, although we also have issues that perhaps their landscaping renderings sort of misrepresent what would really get built and what would impact us. But this is a view, if I was sitting at the top level of our house, not just the regular ground level or the lower level, but the top level, and I was at a Zoom meeting, and this is not—
Sorry, Ruth, to cut you off real quick. Staff, I'm not seeing any specific view. Are we trying to, Ruth, are you trying to show us something?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Do you see a virtual background? I apologize. I just assumed everyone was on.
We won't be seeing. We might not see your face during the conversation, but we can listen clearly.
Oh, okay. This rendering just shows the impact of what would be built. It's a very different view than what you're seeing from the renderings that have been shared by the applicant. The reason I have this here, it's not perfect. It doesn't really give you a sense of distance, because this is actually, with the parking garage removed, this is what the 3-story building would look like in the background if I was having a Zoom meeting with someone and this was built over 500 feet away from our property. This is what I would be looking at. We would like a chance to get more of the planning and zoning board members out here for a site visit. If you're not inclined to consider our proposal for limiting the proposed project to just the 1-story parking garage or one above grade and a 2-story building, then we'd like to ask for more time. And if you could continue this 30 days to your March 24th agenda to vote on it after we have a chance to get board members out here to better inform you. The one board member that came out commented to us that if they had not been out here, they would not have such a greater appreciation of exactly what our concerns were, that this is not just frivolous NIMBYism saying, oh, we don't want something built next to us. We're trying to show, wow, you are immersing us in a commercial development. And for all the reasons that everyone else has talked about, the history of how this has been sort of misrepresented to us or promises made and not kept to us, we're just trying to say, slow down, try to get more of the picture from us, give us a chance to give you that. You may still disagree with us, but the renderings and projections that you're seeing from the developer not meant to be deceitful, but they are just, they're the standard kind of renderings that you would get for a project, but they are not showing a correct context of what we know we would be going through. And if you come here on site, as the member who did come here was able to see, you can get a much better visualization. And it's actually sort of shocking.
Well, thank you so much, Ruth. I'm sorry we've run out of time for your comments, but I do appreciate it. We let you go a couple over a minute over just because I was very interested in what you had to say, and I appreciate
You're wonderful,
that.
Dane.
I actually was able to go out there as well, although not with the neighbors, and I think, and I do see a few nods, other members of the board were able to also visit on our own and spend time out there seeing this site, not necessarily in backyards, but up at the canal so that we could get a better sense of what's there. So I do appreciate your comments. Let's go ahead.
Can I interject real quick? This is Lisa Mills. I'm sorry, I had trouble unmuting my phone earlier, and I just wanted to make a comment if possible.
Yeah, Lisa, we were wondering what had happened, so please, we'd love to hear from you today. If you could help us, we are continuously going over. If you could help us keep it within that 3 minutes, that would be great.
I'll be really brief. My name's Lisa Mills, and my husband and I own the home and reside at 1360 West Esplanade. And I just want to add my voice in unison with my neighbors and the residents of the neighborhood that I'd really like to request that the proposed parking garage be built underground, and so that no more than one story of the structure is above ground. I'd also like to request that the proposed commercial building be restricted to 2 stories tall. So it's congruent with the equivalent height of the current Waypoint buildings 1, 2, and 3. I'm invested in Mesa. I'm invested in this neighborhood. I want to live here a long time. I want my neighbors' home values, even though I won't be able to see it from my backyard. It affects me still financially and the home value of my home with how it affects their home values. And I want to stay in this neighborhood just like I know they do. And this has a significant impact on all of us. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm glad you were able to get back on. I appreciate your time. Okay, Becky, what names do we have next?
The next comment card is from Anna Mae Showalter, and she would like to speak, I believe.
Anna, are you available to speak? Anna Mae?
Hi, this is Ruth Ann again. So Anna Mae is my mom. She will be 94 on St. Patrick's Day. We both moved here a little over about 6 months before the pandemic started. She has a little bit of trouble hearing on the Zoom call and has asked that I just say a few more things.
Yeah, that sounds
okay?
good. We went about 5 minutes on yours. If you could be as brief as you can, that would be no problem at all. Thank you.
I will. So just to continue, that COVID changes things. Time is limited. Resources are limited. We understand that. But again, in asking for more time, if that's what's needed, to get you to see our side just a little bit more, and having a site visit actually with us, we feel is reasonable to ask, because developers, architects, planner, everyone out there building projects has had years to establish relationships with the city planning department, with the board in some way or another. They have their credibility. We have a very small window, especially since we were only told about the project about 10 months after the planning actually first started, 9 months after it first started with the city, we became aware of it. And we've had to scramble with no advocacy from the city at all to learn our way around this process, to learn the information that's out there, to learn what our rights are. And would ask for more time to actually get to have some one-on-one back and forth with people to get our story out there again. We even got limited by the developers hosting the CPP, the citizen participation meetings, on Zoom. There should have been a way to make this an in-person meeting. They went with Zoom, but then they even limited our time to make comments and questions. So the citizen participation report that you see that staff shared with you is not even a complete list of what our concerns were. And they only listed things that they sort of addressed in the concessions that they gave with their redesign. So the city's throwing resources at this, like even having the director of economic development come out, but we don't even get a chance to talk about the other side of economic development. That, for example, is our next door neighbors whose family donated $1 million to and had the Ikeda, theater named after them. New buildings and
About 20
office
more seconds,
spaces
please.
are not the whole story to economic development. I apologize. I went over time, and I appreciate, Mr. Astle, that you let me do that.
That's okay.
Sorry.
I appreciate your comments. Thank you so very much. It's great to have you here. Okay, Becky, next name.
That concludes the comment cards. However, we wanted to go back to Philip Bramson and see if he wanted to state his comments now.
Yep, perfect.
Yes,
Philip,
thank you very much. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right.
3 minutes.
Chairman Astle and board members, my name is Phil Bramson. Speaking on behalf of my mother, Maureen Schultz. She resides at 1242 West Mountain View. Her deceased husband, Doy Schultz, built this home over 40 years ago. My mother is a nearly 70-year resident of the city of Mesa. You've heard a number of issues addressed today by numerous neighbors. I hope you will focus on one key question. Are the proposed 3-story, 152,000 square foot, 50-foot tall office building and the 4-story, 40-foot tall parking garage appropriate for this setting, less than 300 feet from single-family residential custom homes? I doubt that anyone on this board would choose to have that scenario in their own backyard. The neighbors would like to request that the proposed office building and parking garage be denied as inconsistent with the city site plan criteria and design guidelines, and as too great an intensification of this site, inconsistent with the 2007 and 2014 approvals. If for some reason you choose to recommend the applicant's proposal, that the neighborhood asks that you would impose the following stipulations at a minimum. 1, that the office building and parking garage be lowered to 2 stories. The parking garage be lowered, providing 1 or 2 stories underground if they still feel they need that additional parking. As you've heard, the site is substantially over parked to code. That the parking garage be redesigned to include a level of architectural detail that matches that in the office buildings. This should include physically breaking up the large south-facing facade using horizontal articulation and building breaks. Also, the addition of architectural elements such as physical metal detailing and pop-outs and the use of contrasting colors, and modifying the roof line and horizontal breaks to create visual interest. 3, that the adjacent residential community be provided with modified garage designs per the conditions just mentioned. 4, that the adjacent residential community be made aware of any further modifications to this entire center, including any administrative requests, regardless of scope. 5, that the garage screening is solid, fully opaque, and not perforated metal that still transmits headlights and interior garage lighting. 6, that the garage top floor lighting poles be as low as physically possible, and all garage lighting be consistent with dark sky requirements and shielded from the adjacent residential neighborhoods. 7, that nighttime renderings be submitted to the neighbors and the city showing light spillage and including photometric detailing and lighting. And lastly, that parking garage rooftop solar panels not be added administratively in the future. Thank you for your time and consideration. There is a written copy of these requested stipulations that was previously provided to staff.
And we did receive those, Philip, so I appreciate you reading those for us.
Thank you.
And I appreciate your time today. Thank you. Okay, Becky, as I understand it, we've allowed for the public to speak at this point as the cards that we have.
That's correct, Chair.
We can go ahead and close our.
I apologize for interrupting, but Richard Gertler, you should have a submission from him. I know he's on the call.
Do we have
Here's my
anything that
next-
we've missed there, Becky, written down?
No, I did not receive one.
We did submit it. Is he allowed to talk?
I don't want to pass over Richard. I guess we don't have a card from him. Is there a way we could hear quickly, maybe a few comments, and that way we can move on with discussing this amongst the board and staff? Richard?
Are you able to hear me?
You could state your name and address, Richard, and please, if you could keep it maybe to a minute here, as we've gone over a little bit more than we expected with the comments, that would be wonderful. Thank you so much.
I did go through the process of putting in a comment card, and I don't know what happened.
Okay. Maybe it happened a little after that cutoff. It's possible. I don't know.
No, I did it several hours before the meeting, so. Okay, anyway, my name's Richard Gertler. I live at 1304 West Mountain View Drive, Mesa, 85201. I have lived in this home for 41 years, and I have seen many changes along the way. Initially, my view was wonderful, with great views of the Papago, Camelback, McDowell, Red Mountain, and Four Peak Mountains. Immediately below our home was an agricultural field. As the population of Mesa grew and development started occurring, we knew a day would come when there would be development on the field below us. We knew that our resident did not have any legal rights to preserve our view, but we hoped that the city and whoever developed the land would show some respect for our homes that were so close to the southern edge of the property. The development, which took place in 2007, and which was described in neighborhood meetings, showed 3 buildings along Bass Pro Drive. Buildings were some distance from our homes and would, of course, block some of our view. But we felt the owner had a right to develop the land, and the 3 buildings were limited to 2 stories, a very reasonable height. But in 2014, when a 4th building was built, it seems the development approval process was behind closed doors, and the neighborhood had no knowledge of the approval process and no opportunity to object. In addition, the developers stuck their finger in our eyes by placing the buildings extremely close to several homes in our neighborhood and increased the height from 2 stories to 3 stories without our knowledge or approval. This was a terrible invasion of privacy. Now the developers are once again showing total disregard of the homeowner's interests by proposing a 3-story building and a 4-story parking garage that is a massive invasion of my and others' privacy. My home is the closest to this proposed garage, a mere sandwich distance in golfing terms, just over 200 feet. This would be a massive structure dominating the view from my property and would increase noise and lighting on my property. I strenuously object to the proposed structures and ask that the development be denied entirely, because it seems like we've had a lot of misinformation and things have happened with our full knowledge. What we have seen over the years is unrestrained greed. The proposed additions are to maximize profits without adequate consideration of the neighboring homes. The proposal is totally inappropriate. There should be limits as to how close and how high a structure can be placed adjacent to residential homes. And if anything is allowed, it should start at a low height and increase slowly as the distance from the homes increases. This proposed parking garage should not be allowed to be higher than 1 story and then increase to the north to a maximum height of 2 stories for the added office buildings. That's all I have to say.
Richard, thank you so much for your time. I'm glad we were able to get you in there, and I apologize if something occurred with technology getting your card in there. Okay, at this point, I believe we've heard from the public. It's been really nice to hear the comments and concerns, and very important to this case to see the concerns of the neighborhood. At this point, what helps the board is to give a few more minutes back, as we've only heard for about 10 minutes from the applicant initially, and the neighbors have had a chance to speak to those initial comments. We'd like to make sure that Mr. Baugh, representing the applicant, has a minute to comment back on some of the things he heard and can address for us as a board so that we understand what's been done. And then at that point, we'll move forward with discussion as a board. So, Mr. Baugh, would you like to spend a few minutes? Do you have any items you'd like to address and respond to based on what you heard? You're currently muted.
Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for giving me the chance to talk. I know you've had a long meeting and much participation from the community here. I want to be respectful of your time. I'll just say that there's no interest in building a garage if it doesn't serve a need. If it wasn't required, we wouldn't go forward and build it. But what we know is what the user demand expects and requires. The worst thing that we could do was build an office building that did not have the parking demands needed for it based on the market. And as a result, have an obsolete building that's built with no functionality. I certainly respect and understand the sentiments and feelings shared at this. I did not participate in the prior decisions made by the city that led to this point. I just know that a 2-story building about 30 plus feet was planned here back in '07. And what we have today is a garage building that's 26 to 37 feet in roughly the same location as originally planned. I appreciate your time today. I want to be respectful and be brief, so I'll just end it with that.
Thank you, Mr. Baugh, for your time. Board members, do we have any questions for the applicant or for staff at this point as we move forward and discuss this case? Let's go ahead and start with Board Member Allen.
My question is for staff. Is there any record of promises made to the neighborhoods surrounding this project back in 2014 or 2007 or whatever they had time frame that they had talked about? I think it was the attorney that's representing some of those homeowners that brought that up. My question is to staff, do we have any record? Is there anything showing that there were promises made?
Board Member Allen, Chair, we have the minutes from those meetings and the conditions of approval that approved those through both the site plan process and council. There are no specific conditions of approval with that stipulation.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions, board members, for staff? I know we addressed a few concerns and got a lot of the data portion of this covered in our study session, so I think we're fairly clear as it relates to how this is proposed. I guess maybe one question I have, and this could be for staff, as it related to what we heard from Doug. I apologize, the last name I don't have listed, but it was the attorney, it sounded like an attorney, maybe I'm jumping to conclusions, representing a few members of the, I think it was Janice. The comment, most importantly, the comment that I heard was that this is designed far beyond the initial square footage requirement or thought for that initial site plan. And I understand that we're amending, so having it be more isn't necessarily, nothing's being hidden. That's what the amendment is for, so that it is ultimately seen now and voted upon now and recommended to council now at this time. Is this additional square footage, correct, from the initial 2007 or 13 approvals?
Chair, board members, that would be correct, and that's why staff's bringing it for you as a modification.
Yes, okay. Just clarifying that. So ultimately, it is understood, and I believe all of us as a board are aware that we're voting today for that increase, assuming that's something that was desirable versus something that we didn't know about. So that just clearing that up for everybody listening. Any other comments or questions, board members, regarding this case? Any stipulation discussions? We had a few things in our study session that we were thinking about that maybe need to come to discussion now, probably the right time for that. Board Member Crockett.
Thank you, Chair Astle. Question for staff. Is there any opportunity at this point going forward for the neighbors to have input in finalizing the plans for landscaping on the south side of the garage or the screening? I know that Mr. Baugh indicated that the picture he showed of some different screening now hasn't even been presented to the design board, but is there an opportunity for the neighbors to weigh in with their views on either the landscaping or the screening that's being proposed for the garage?
Chair, members of the board, the design of the building, including the parking garage and the screening and the landscaping requirements from the zoning ordinance, goes to the design review board for them to review and make recommendation to me as a planning director to make the final determination. This project actually went to the design review twice. The first one, based on the neighborhood concerns and input, actually the DRB recommended the applicant actually revisit and make changes, which they did. And it went back again to the DRB for the second time, and the DRB made those specific changes, which now is very specific as to the screening, increase in the landscaping, which they've done. So in terms of process, the DRB was satisfied with the recommended changes that is coming to me once the applicant make the changes for the final review. My concern is adding a new process will be deviation from the city's code, because really the design review board is the recommending body. If we want to basically request again for the design review board to review it again, you can ask that condition, but ultimately they will review it again and just confirm that the changes that has been made by the applicant is actually the changes they were expecting, but ultimately it will come to me for a final approval. That's the authority given to me in the zoning code.
And Chair Astle, I'm not suggesting that we should add additional process. I was just wondering if there was still an opportunity to have input, but it sounds like that we've gone beyond that point. I did have one other question, and that's with regard to lighting. And I would just ask Mr. Baugh if he would briefly respond. He mentioned that there had been some changes to the lighting in the garage. If he could just elaborate a little bit more on what the applicant has done with respect to the lighting in the parking garage to address some of the neighbors' concerns. And then also in terms of whether there would be much opposition from the applicant if there were to be an additional stipulation regarding the solar panels on the building, which would be something to the effect that the solar panels could not be added unless there was a review process coming back through the P&Z.
Mr. Baugh, can you address the lighting for us today based on that question?
Absolutely. Thank you for that question. With regards to the garage, on the levels within the garage, the lighting is recessed inside the ceiling of the garage. And then all the lighting also has shields on it as well. In addition, the photometric plan is required by the city to make sure that it meets the requirement of 0-foot candles at the property line, which we do as well.
Yep. And I mean, that's a huge, as it relates to photometrics, I do those often in my profession. Having that arrive at 0-foot candles outside of the perimeter like they're doing is very comforting to me as it relates to making sure they're meeting code. The fixtures specifically that are being used are typically used inside of those photometric studies and modeled very similar to what a night rendering would do, and allow them to determine where that light's going and how far it's being spread. So that gives me a lot of confidence that the proper methods and attention is being taken to make sure that this doesn't spread any more than it's designed to.
And Mr. Chair, if I could just follow up with Mr. Baugh on one thing. Mr.
Please.
Baugh, did you mention earlier that instead of having light poles on the top floor of the garage, that you've lowered those? He's on mute.
There we go. Yes, I'll address that. I think initially we were planning to have several lights under the solar canopies, which would have been a lot more light on top of the roof. By removing the solar canopies, we're able to move a substantial amount of light. Another thing we could do is at the top of, I think we do have a pole on each end, but we could also add wall pack lights along the parapet of that second floor if it made a better difference.
And then if Mr. Baugh, if you could just briefly respond to the issue of a stipulation regarding the solar panels and the need to bring back a request before P&Z before those would be added in the future?
Yeah, that's a very good observation, one that I had not appreciated or considered before, but certainly given the neighbors' sentiment that some changes may have occurred administratively, we would not object to any stipulation to be added that would prohibit any future solar canopies to be added. We want to respect that request. We've removed it, and if it needs to be reflected in a stipulation that prohibits any additional solar arrays to be added in the future, we're agreeable to that prohibition as a stipulation.
I think it's a fairly simple compromise, and it would help satisfy a good portion of what we've heard today as it relates to increasing height administratively. Those solar panels, although they're fairly transparent in the way they're designed, still cause a little break in the view corridor that I know is a concern. So I think that would be helpful, and I think a fairly manageable request that we could include if the board thinks that would make sense.
Chair Astle, I would support that additional stipulation, and it would be something to the effect that the applicant or the owner of the property will not add, I guess I'm struggling to how to word it. The concern is that solar panels could not be added through an administrative process where the neighbors did not get notice and an opportunity to weigh in on that.
Yeah. Another concern is not necessarily the solar panels themselves, it's the view corridor. So I'm a little worried about something that says you can't follow any kind of a new way of green energy. It's mainly not build it above that upper level. As I understand it, is that sounding about right from you guys as well? I just would want to make sure that, for example, if it were built at that upper level, just flat against the drive itself, would that be of the same concern? I don't know. The reflection I know is a concern also, so maybe it's easier to stipulate panels specifically, but just thinking out loud.
Instead of being quite so, Chair, humble suggestion, instead of being quite so prescriptive about the exact building type or material that would trigger going back to a public review process, simply stating anything that will affect the ultimate height or adding anything that adds height to the top of the building then triggers a public review process. We don't know what kind of technology will be in the future, and if ultimately that is a concern of residents, both from a height perspective, a view perspective, as well as a transparency perspective, I would be more comfortable with just a stipulation that indicates public review needed if there's any proposed changes to the height of what is in the plan currently.
Okay, I think that makes sense.
Chair, we do have a draft condition for that, so after your discussion, I can read and see if that's okay with you guys.
Okay. Any other conditions, members of the board, that we want to discuss today on this case? Okay.
No other conditions, just a couple of comments, Chair. I do appreciate the neighbors. I've always been an advocate for neighborhood participation, and I can appreciate that. And I'm glad that a few members went out to actually view the site. I just want to be clear that a couple of comments made by residents. It is correct that nobody has a legal right to a view. And we have seen multiple plans come before us where folks have sent in pictures of their kids on play sets and on swing sets. They may not be in affluent neighborhoods, to use the language that we stated this evening. They might not be $500,000 homes, as was stated this evening. But I have no doubt that those same residents have the same level of pride and dignity about their neighborhoods as any other. And we have never used that as a justification to reject a plan outright. I can certainly understand the hard feelings and the wish for privacy, the wish for some sort of screening. I think the changes that have been made satisfy those requests. I don't believe that, however, there is any sort of legal right to view. And again, I'd like to remind the board that we have seen this repeatedly, a concern from residents to justify rejecting plans. And at least to date, my term on the board, we've never used that outright. So I would just remind that. And again, glad to see the citizen participation. We have lots of good neighborhoods out there, again, affluent and not so affluent, that have the same level of pride and dignity about their residents. That is the only stipulation that I would be in favor of, and I'm comfortable with that and moving forward as presented.
Thank you very much. Any other thoughts? Board Member Ayers.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo the last comments made as well. I do appreciate the comments that have come in from the public. I actually am very familiar. I lived very near to this site. I actually looked at potentially that property on 1328 Mountain View many years ago myself, so I'm very familiar. And I appreciate the comments that we've received today. And I also want to voice my thoughts as well on the stipulation. I totally agree with that. I think that's appropriate. Appreciate, again, everyone getting on. So,
thank you very much, Board Member Ayers. Any other comments? Okay.
Well, I'll just state that it is a difficult, I think, case in the fact, for me, in the fact that I do feel that, you know, the new screen that the client provided today is I think much better, more artistic. The site plan, despite what was proposed in 2004 for square footage wise, I believe as it looks today, it doesn't look complete. It looks like it's not serving its maximum capacity, maximum use. So it is, I do feel that a new building and a parking structure are warranted on the site. I feel like the existing 3-story building there actually, when I actually went into the site as well, from the commercial employment area and from the residents, and looked, and I feel like that the existing 3-story is actually more going to be impactful. I feel it feels like it's closer and more in your face than what is being proposed. And I do feel it is unfortunate that that was all administratively done. And if, you know, I think that moving forward that step, I think definitely will help that in the future. And I don't know that if we have other sites like this in the area that have these unlimited that go through site plan, but those are big things I feel that need to be public input more so. And then I do feel it's kind of needs to be completed. And this is kind of similar to, I feel like when someone was asking about Heat Island and what the employers are going to be looking at in the parking garage, in Tempe Town Lake, they have the Smith, I think it was Smith Barney, I don't know what it is now. But the building is similar. I worked in one and it's a great area. And then you get lots of different activity in there and it builds upon that on the river corridor. And as Deanna mentioned, I really dislike hearing the view issue. Just in terms of just, I don't feel, despite you might have had one, there are several jurisdictions in between these homes and the views that they're speaking of. So we don't even have control over any of that stuff. It's every property as it comes in and jurisdiction. I really am frustrated the fact that it is a PAD amendment review. So this is the time for the neighbors to come and speak and voice their opposition. And I do support them doing that. And I do feel we've all heard them very much. We've gotten all the emails and calls, and I've gotten calls from different people who've been on site. So I feel like we've all, as a board, heard enough to give our viewpoints and properly vote on it versus a continuance. So I feel we're ready to vote on this. And I really do appreciate all the neighbors for coming out, and you have been heard. And I think maybe it might just be looking at processes in the future of how things go through in the city for administrative processes, what should qualify and what should not.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Board Member Sarkisian. Okay, if we could, I'd love to hear the proposed stipulation from staff. And then at that point, I'd accept a motion.
Chair, members of the board, the condition of approval to be added to the already conditions of approval on the case is any future site plan modification to increase the height of buildings or parking garage or square footage of any of the buildings shall require review by the Planning and Zoning Board and City Council.
Okay. And staff feels like that addresses the question of photovoltaic panels coming and being installed on a cage up top. That should equally cover those as well, correct?
Chair members of the board, so with that discussion, my understanding from the board was the condition to address the height will take care of that, because in the future, there could be panels that may not really increase the height of the buildings. But, so that's why we limited the condition to the height of the buildings.
That sounds good. Okay, if the board agrees and understands what was read, I'm ready to accept a motion for this case.
And I'll go ahead and do that one. I move that we would approve ZON 2000538, District 1, within the 1,200 to 1,400 blocks of West Bass Pro Drive and the 1,100 block of North Alma School Road, located south of the 202 Red Mountain Freeway on the west side of Alma School Road, modification to the planned area development overlay on the property and site plan review, including staff's recommendation of approval with conditions, and also including the condition, the additional condition that was read in for the record by Mr. Apia today.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go ahead and do a roll call vote. Chair Astle, yes. Vice Chair Sarkisian.
Yes.
As Board Member Boyle has recused himself from this, we'll go to Board Member Allen.
Yes.
Board Member Crockett.
I vote aye.
Board Member Villanueva Saucedo.
Yes.
Board Member Ayers.
Yes.
Okay. All right, the recommendation of council is to approve this case, and that passed unanimously with those that could be present for voting. So I appreciate everybody, and I do want a reminder to those who are involved and neighbors involved, please consider. We recommend to council based on the information that we gather and as we've seen it and understand it, you do get to be involved in the final decision for this case. If I'm not mistaken, as we're amending the PAD, it will go to council.
Chair,
Do we have?
Chairman
Yes.
of the board, just to add to that, so this case will be introduced on March 1st at City Council, and then for action on March 15th. So the introduction, as those who are on the line may or may not know, typically the introduction is to introduce the case and inform the public of when the action is going to be to occur, and the action will occur on March 15th.
Okay, thank you for that information. That'll be very helpful to those that continue to be involved, and we encourage you to, as that's very important. Okay, at this point, staff, anything additional that we need to address prior to adjourning our meeting today?
Chair, members of the board, no, we do not. We will see you on March 10th.
Okay, thank you very much. I can accept the motion at this point to adjourn our meeting.
I move that we adjourn our board meeting.
Thank you, Board Member.
Second.
Thank you, Board Member Ayers. All right, all in favor, please vote. Aye.
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 All right, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate everybody involved. We'll see you next time.